My name's Layton HAWKES. I'm a games designer at Halfbrick. And just to give you a brief overview of what I've done. Whoops. So I've had the absolute privilege of working on updates for both Fruit Ninja and Jetpack Joyride over their lifespans. And I've been on the full development team for Fish Out of Water and most recently Bears vs. Art. And today I'm going to be talking only about Bears vs. Art. But if you have any questions about any of the other games I've worked on, come and see me. So hopefully that's playing. Excellent. So Bears vs. Art is a free-to-play puzzle game. The objective is you play as Rory the bear and you roll yourself around a level until you've destroyed all the art. We introduce things like move and time limits throughout it and obstacles, and the game gradually gets harder. And there is kind of a linear world map between each level. As you can see, our little Fruit Ninja-esque mini-game there, slashing up the art. And this was definitely a team effort. It's not just me. I have an awesome team, the Ninja Pack, back at Halfbrick, and a big thanks to them. They're super talented and awesome to work with. So this talk is really a soft launch journey that we took with this game. And there were really two distinct phases in this soft launch, and I'll be covering both of those phases today. And through these phases, we developed a really core focus on retention, and we learned a new way of developing, a new approach through this that eventually led us to global launch just last month. So before I get into the nuts and bolts of the talk, and we talk about how we were creative with it, understanding retention is kind of key to this talk and key to this journey. So just in case anyone's fuzzy, I just want to give a kind of overview of it. It's often referred to as the most important metric in a user's life cycle. And put simply, it's just a measure of how long you keep a player coming back to your game. And how do we calculate it personally? Because there's a lot of different ways of calculating retention. Basically, we just measure it as a percentage of users that play on a particular day after they've installed the game. So if I say day one retention is 40%, I'm just saying that 40% of people who installed the game 1 day ago played again today. Likewise, if I say day 7 retention is 10%, I'm just saying 10% of people who installed the game 7 days ago played again today. And in this way, retention served us as a compass to point us in the right direction, allowing us to validate new changes that we were making to the game just based on user feedback. What were people engaging with? So that was really, really helpful to us. So we're going to go to the first island, the first stop on our journey, and this is where soft launch began for us. And what do I mean by soft launch? If you don't know, well, soft launch to us is just releasing a game in selected markets to measure its metrics or data. It's basically just to tell us how well it's performing. And why did we soft launch this game? Why did we bother? For Bears vs. Art, there were many metrics that we wanted to track, and things just like the difficulty of puzzles, the difficulty of our levels. We wanted to make sure that was right. And also, of course, things like retention. I don't think every game needs a soft launch, but potentially for Bears vs. Art, there were many benefits. So we launched March last year. We were iOS only to start with, and we launched in Australia and Canada. And so this is our initial retention graph. Hopefully you can see that. And we started to get a bit worried. The company set benchmarks, which are in blue, which is 45% day 1 and 15% day 7. They weren't actually that high. Those aren't high benchmarks, and we were still falling short. So kind of increasing this metric of retention became our key goal. And so this leads us into phase 1 of our soft launch, which is safe bets. And our main approach during this phase was to increase retention was looking at the difficulty of our puzzles and balancing this. We wanted to get more people moving through the levels, not getting stuck, and thus decrease their frustration, and hopefully that therefore increase the time that they would stick around in the game. And we had charts like this provided by our analytics team to show us the relative difficulty of all levels. As you can see, level 75 there is a huge spike. That was a really tough one. And so we did a lot of tweaking to these levels, looking at the graphs. And as you can see, we had some success. It's actually a little bit hard to see, but There's sections of blue there that are just drops in level difficulty as we tweaked them. And really the thing here is we were just playing around. We were trying to take off the top of those difficulty spikes so that we got more players going through the game and getting to the good bits, getting invested. So what was our retention like after this? Well, as you can see, we'd made a lot of progress, gaining 0% everywhere. And so this was a bit of a wake-up call. So what did we do? We tweaked some more. And then we tweaked a whole bunch more, like a lot more, so many times. And we went through this process, and still, we were making no progress. And so these level tweaks weren't exactly the only thing that we tried during this phase 1 of our soft launch. But these changes were characterized by making safe bets and following trends, really. This is what we should be doing. We should be tweaking the levels because that's what you do in a linear level-based puzzle game, right? But this proved to be a mistake, and we were repeating the same mistake for 5 months. And the team was getting increasingly worried. Like, we weren't increasing retention, and we realized that tweaking wasn't enough. And it's maybe a simple realization now, but at the time we were going through the process, it wasn't. And our biggest lesson during this process was that caution is the enemy of a good soft launch. Caution really restricted our creativity, and it meant we focused on safe bets. And that wasn't helpful at all. We needed to make some changes to our approach, and we needed to shift our way of thinking. This is what we realized. So this leads me into phase 2 of our soft launch, which I've called creative risks. And so after spinning our wheels, caution really did become the enemy of our soft launch, and the team was determined to formulate a new approach. And we would spend 6 to 8 weeks just trying something completely different, just go out there and try something that we hadn't tried before. So we would rock the boat with big changes. None of this tweaking business. We would deliberately try and disrupt things in the game. And we would also take creative risks and embrace failure. Failure would be a lesson. And I don't mean we would just say that. I mean we would embody this. We would really learn from our mistakes and enable ourselves to make big mistakes. And we wanted to make these type of changes rapidly and ship 2 of these per week. In this way, we would accelerate our own learning about our game so that we can make the changes that would really matter. And finally, we would use, where possible, a scientific approach. We would form a hypothesis about, I think this change will do this, and then measure the results. And you might be asking how we measured the results. Well, enter split testing. Or A/B testing, as it's sometimes referred to. And this was going to be the methodology that enabled us to make these big changes. So all that split testing is we shipped a new feature to a certain number of our users, and then compared the changes against a control group that didn't have that feature. Did that feature then increase or decrease retention when compared to the control group that didn't have it? It's worth noting that we collected analytics from both tests, the new feature and the control, at the same period of time, so we don't have time pollution of our data. And there was enough players in each of those test groups to mean we had a really low margin of error, plus or minus 2%. So before I get into showing you the split tests, there's one thing that really remained for us to start this process. And obviously launching 2 changes per week on iOS was just not going to be feasible with Apple's submission process. So we soft launched on Google Play. And this would be our primary test bed moving forward from this point. So we had to reground ourselves. We needed our retention on Google Play, so we weren't just working off iOS numbers or something silly. So this is our retention numbers on Google Play. It's a bit lower day 7, which is even more terrifying. But on the whole, it's strikingly similar. So now I'm going to show you some examples of the split tests we tried using this new approach. So the first one, we used a very technical term, actionify the movement. And all we wanted to do here was increase the movement speed of the bear. That's what this change is. It adds some more impact effects, and the camera shakes are bigger. And it was a super quick change to make. Like this was almost nothing. But it had large implications for our gameplay, because we had timed levels, and those levels are almost trivialized when the bear's moving at like double the speed. And it was also challenging our previous assumptions that puzzle players wanted a slower paced game. Do they? So here is the speed before, just the bear rolling around. And after the change, yeah, so it's way faster. So the results. So what you're seeing here is a % increase in retention compared to the control group that we had. It's not the final retention numbers, it's just based on day 1 to day 7 retention down the bottom, what were the change. And obviously this was a big win. This is like 15 to 20% increases in retention across the board, just from making the bear faster in a puzzle game. So this was really surprising to us that such a simple change could yield such big results. And here we were starting to use retention as that compass that I mentioned earlier to say, what do players actually want? Are our assumptions right? So we were really feeling really good about ourselves at this point. We're like, sweet, we got this. We're going to try something even bigger. And so our next thing we added to the game was a 3-star system, a star rating system, to all of our puzzles. And this was kind of developed to counteract the high difficulty of the game at this point. I mean, obviously this is in a lot of other puzzle games, but we'd never added it to this one. And on the whole, it made the game easier, because our 3rd star, like our 3-star solution, our 1-star solution was what our previous one was. And this change, unlike Actionify, which I just showed you before, was pretty big. Like, we had to change the way goals were presented in the level. We added a lot of new UI. We had to retouch the world map, as you can see there, with the stars on each level and things like that. So it was a pretty big change. And the team was really excited about this. Like, we thought for sure that this is really going to do really well. The results? So that's kind of hard to see up there, but again, % changes against our control group. This didn't do great at all. In fact, on day 5, that's like minus 18% over our control group. And what we like isn't always what players like. And we relearned this through this test. And we suspect that these results actually just reflect the reduced challenge, and therefore the reduced payoff when you actually complete the levels in the game. But as a failure, this was a lesson. We wanted to embody this. Adding levels of difficulty to each puzzle kind of took away some of the satisfying mental reward in solving a puzzle the exact right way, getting that optimal solution and fist pumping. So undeterred, we moved on to perhaps our biggest split test, and that's the RPG system. Now, we were kind of inspired by things like Diablo, and games like that, and we're like, oh, what if we just added a skill system in? I don't know, let's see what happens. We're being creative, we're taking some risks. Let's see. So you could spend skill points in either the bear's speed, savvy, intelligence, or cunning. And this gave the player extra moves, time, and a whole bunch of extra stuff. And as you progressed further into the game, we wanted the skills that you got to kind of the bear to become more powerful as the difficulty of the puzzles increased in the game. And in this way, the extra moves gained from upping my bear's intelligence meant that as the puzzles got more difficult, they give me some extra moves to help compensate. It helped balanced against the difficulty. Not to mention, this system actually added some long-term depth, because skill points were earned over time. It was an appointment mechanic. And additionally, we added, the bear could wear costumes in the base game, but the costumes didn't really do much. But now we added 3 levels of research to each costume, and wearing these would give you bonuses to your skills. And this kind of made our costumes more like items in a traditional RPG. They gave you bonuses when they were worn. And research would take time to complete. So how did this system go? Well, it was our highest performing test over 5+ days, and it kept performing well over day 7. In fact, this kind of just kept gaining momentum the longer that people played it. They got more invested in this. And this kind of feature is a testament to our new approach to be kind of creatively free and have that freedom to fail. Like, we'd failed before, and we just went, well, if this fails, at least we know that maybe an RPG system doesn't fit into our puzzle game. But we didn't know that it wouldn't. So we tried it out. And we never would have tried a system like this had we not been free with this approach to do so. And we never would have gone like anywhere near this kind of system in phase 1 of our soft launch when we were tweaking. And I think this system really succeeded because of the layered appointment mechanics, and it provided a really compelling reason to come back to the game beyond what we had before. The goals here kept players who wanted to skill up their bear, like going for well over 7 days. So lastly, we focused our attention on the energy system. And I know this might be kind of interesting to some free-to-play devs out there. So previously we had a fairly nice energy system. It was one that it cost 1 paw to play a level, and then when you succeeded, you got 1 back as a refund. And if you failed, we took the energy paw away. In this test, we just took out the refund. So it took 1 energy to play a level regardless of success or failure. And in that way, energy became solely a measure of how many times you could play the game before you had to put it down. It was just how much time could you play in one sitting. And it actually reduced that. It restricted the player more, this system, right? Because we took out the refund. So how did this system go? So this was our highest day 7 increase of all our tests. In fact, it goes well off the chart here. It goes to 30% increase over our control. Why do we think this worked? Restricting someone's playtime, increasing our retention? To use a metaphor from a former colleague of mine, Luke Muscat, who, by the way, did an awesome GDC talk. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. So if you give someone a cake and you say you can eat as much of this cake as you want, they'll probably eat half that cake in one sitting and then feel sick and throw the rest away. But if you give them that same cake and you say you can eat 1 slice per day, you'll probably eat 1 slice per day until you completed the whole cake. So like here we were giving players bite-sized positive experiences that meant that they would come back over a longer period of time. Now, of course, to validate the results, we had to try the exact opposite. Instead of restricting the player's amount of playtime, we removed energy entirely. And I have to say, like, the office was pretty pumped at this because they didn't want energy. They just wanted to play as much of the game as they could. So what were the results from no energy at all? Boom. Almost the exact opposite. In fact, this was the lowest retention figures of any of our tests. I'm sorry about the colors there. So here we gave players the whole cake, and they didn't want to continue eating. Now, this kind of validated the way we had designed our energy system. Now, I'm not saying an energy system should work for every game, and you should definitely put energy into your game and make it as restrictive as possible. But through this approach, we explored what worked the best for this game. What actually made the game the most engaging for players. So after 6 weeks of working this way, we had 30+ tests. Like, there's a lot I didn't talk about, so if you're interested, come and talk to me. And essentially, we just combined the best together. We combined stuff like Actionify, increasing the movement speed of the bear, that RPG system I talked about, and our no energy refunds, and we combined them all into a super test. This is what we're hedging our bets on. If we've got increases, then what can putting them together do? And you could see that we touched areas of the game that actually fit together. We didn't have to compromise. You could put the RPG system with faster movement. So here are the numbers that we were before, day 1 and day 7, our combined test, and this is the results after. So our day 1 went from 38 to 50% retention, and day 7 surged well past double, actually, to 20% from 7. And although these results aren't industry leading, they kind of consolidated this new approach for us. taking creative risks when improving a metric. And I have no doubt if we kept doing this, we could achieve even higher results using this method. And it showed us that we could make really bold and daring changes to our game and just identify which changes players engaged with. It's really freeing. So just to wrap up, what key lessons did we learn through this process? Don't be cautious, embrace failure, and create a system where you can embrace failures as a learning experience and kind of measure that. And I guess split testing worked for us. Don't be precious. Just find which changes stick. Throw a bunch out there and see which work. Challenge your own assumptions when doing that. You never really know until you try something out. That's definitely what we found. And rock the boat. Make really big changes because you got to move that needle, see where the compass is pointing that will guide you. Small changes won't do it. And take creative risks to accelerate your own learning about your game. If we were just making small changes, then what are we really learning? And make your game the best it can be from that because your players will actually guide you. So these changes paved the way for us to launch Bears vs. Ark globally on the 30th of April. And we continue to split test big changes to the game even after global launch. It really has, we're hooked on this. We're being creative and we're targeting a KPI. We're targeting a metric. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Layton. Do we have any question? Yeah. Okay, hold on. There you go.
Great talk. Thank you very much.
No worries.
When you were doing your difficulty testing, how did you measure difficulty? Level abandons, time to complete per level? What other metric did you measure? Yeah,
so it's basically we measured really, really simple, just fails to completes. So it was just the amount of time a level was failed to the amount of times it was completed. Yeah, really simple.
Okay, another question?
Thanks so much for your great talks. I
Sure.
came from Japan, and even in Japan, Halfbrick is very famous, and many people love your games.
Thank you.
So yes, and so if possible, I am very curious about the size of developing team and the time of each phase spent.
Yep. So the core development team for this game kind of fluctuated, but it was basically between 5 and 7 people. We basically, for the most of the development, we had 2 designers, 2 programmers, and 2 artists, and 1 QA guy that's embedded on our team named Terry, who's amazing. He's also very handsome. And basically, it was about 5 months, I think, in phase 1. And phase 2 of our soft launch was around 6 months. This actual process of doing split testing was about 6 to 8 weeks. But we kind of learnt from that, and we've been continuing to do that in different ways across the game since we did this process because it was really helpful. Yeah.
Okay, another question? Who?
What tools did you use for A/B testing?
Okay.
So we actually developed, so the question was what tools do we use if you didn't hear it for A/B testing. We developed our own really simple A/B testing tool for the game. It's basically just allows us to, we basically assign users based on the millisecond of the clock when they enter the game. And then we have basically a text editor, but it's kind of a visual text editor that we can just assign test groups to people and check out, put ourselves in different test groups and things like that. It was pretty simple. We went for the simple approach over everything we did. We just, enough to get really valid data, and that's it. Yeah.
Another question? Yeah, okay. One here.
Thank you. I'm actually curious. You did the soft launch in Canada and Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Can I have an idea about why you chose those 2 countries? And would it have made a difference if you did a soft launch in another market, perhaps? So we originally soft launched in Australia and Canada. And
Australia was just because it was mainly because it was our home market, and we know Australia. And Canada was because why a lot of people think it is because it's close to the US in terms of spending patterns. We actually did open it up throughout soft launch to more regions, especially once we started onto Google Play. It was actually in Singapore for on Google Play, but that's the reason we chose those two initially.
Okay, so how much time did it go between the soft launch and the actual release of the game?
Yeah, so our soft launch, it was just a little bit over a year. It was a really long soft launch, but why we spent that much time is because we were learning a lot from this game, and we're really focused on learning good things. And if there's still more stuff to learn, we'll continue doing it. So this was definitely a learning process for us, and that's why it took that long.
Another question? Yeah.
Hey. Yeah, we do. So we're still doing A/B testing after global launch, and we're still trying big changes. Like, we're not being scared that it's out there globally. We did have, when we launched it initially globally, a one build. We didn't do A/B test there because we wanted to make sure consistency for reviewers and things like that. But we are testing really big changes globally at the moment. So if you have it, and just check your friend next to you, something might be quite different. Yeah.
Okay, I guess we have time for one more question. Is there any last question? Okay.
Are the global retention the same as the last soft launch version?
Sorry?
Are the global retention
The global
same
retention?
Number, the same number?
Yeah, so our global retention figures are definitely holding up to what we've seen in soft launch. They're not quite the same because obviously global, and we also have tried a lot of monetization tests after this, which maybe is a whole separate talk at some point. But we're pretty pleased with it.
Okay, thank you very much, Layton.
Right. Thank you.
Please give some applause. Yeah.